All right, news of the indictment of former President Trump. As we've already mentioned this evening, it came the very same day as the release of what some are describing as the smoking gun in the House Oversight Committee's investigation into the Biden family's corruption, which includes some $5 million of influence peddling directly that the vice president at the time, president now, received in a peddling scheme for the Ukrainian company Burisma. Well, Republican leaders were quick to criticize the Biden administration's weaponization of the federal government to target a political opponent. We're grateful for that. But now, listen, we've got evidence that continues to mount suggesting a two-tiered system of justice that is developing or perhaps has already developed in the United States. Well, joining me now to discuss this is John Malcolm. He's the vice president for the Institute of Constitutional Government at the Heritage Foundation. Previously, he served for 4 years as Deputy Assistant Attorney General in the Department of Justice's Criminal Division. So, John, thank you so much for joining us this evening on Washington Watch. We deeply appreciate it.
My pleasure. Good to be with you, Jody.
All right, this indictment unsealed this afternoon. What do we know about it so far?
They're pretty serious charges. It's a 44-page indictment containing 38 different counts. 37 of them involve former President Trump. He was indicted along with a guy named Walt Nauta, who had worked as a valet for him in the White House and as a personal aide for him at Mar-a-Lago. The allegations are there are 31 counts that he willfully retained classified information that pertained to national security. There are also allegations that he made efforts to conceal these documents, moved boxes around to prevent the federal government from getting them, and to even hide them from his attorneys who were trying to be responsive to a grand jury subpoena. And there are also allegations that they made false statements about their knowledge about the existence of these documents. And these are, as I say, pretty serious charges. There's a lot of information in the indictment. Basically, there's a couple of claims that not only did former President Trump have these documents, but that on at least 2 occasions he disclosed classified documents to people who did not have the requisite clearance to see those documents. And when he did so, he said, I could have declassified these things when I was president, but I didn't, and I really shouldn't be showing these documents to you. And supposedly, according to the indictment, these conversations were recorded. So unlike the indictment that was returned against former President Trump by Alvin Bragg, the Manhattan District Attorney, those are serious charges too, but I thought and think that they're very weak charges. These are more serious charges. And of course, his legal troubles may not be at an end because Jack Smith, the special counsel, is still investigating him for potential involvement in the events surrounding the riot on January 6th at the Capitol. And the Fulton County District Attorney in Georgia is investigating him for potentially election interference in that state and elsewhere.
Yeah, it's just an ongoing unpeeling of the onion. It's just one level after another of attacks coming against him. And granted, serious charges that you're referencing, but there. I think the problem a lot of people have is, in fact, I know it is, that there's a two-tiered system of justice that, here's Hillary Clinton literally destroyed information that she was ordered not to destroy. Nothing happens. President Biden has these type of things too. So isn't there, at least from former presidents, a relatively high degree of discretion when it comes to compliance with the Presidential Records Act?
Yes, normally. And the president's also, when he was president, had declassification authority. And you are correct that the FBI and the Department of Justice have certainly created the perception in the minds of many, many, many people that there is a two-tiered system of justice. You just mentioned the allegations by a whistleblower of pay-to-play bribery involving Joe Biden himself when he was vice president. You could say the same thing about the seemingly never-ending investigation against Hunter Biden. Certainly Hillary Clinton when she was Secretary of State, had a server at her home in Chappaqua, New York, and she sent and received classified information over that. She had that server wiped clean and her emails all deleted beyond recovery. She was not charged. And this indictment comes on the heels of a scathing report by the special counsel, John Durham, about how the FBI undertook an investigation, Crossfire Hurricane, looking into alleged collusion between the Trump campaign and intelligence officials in the Russian government. And it was all built on a complete lie, and it was a lie that was paid for by the Clinton campaign. So there are a lot of people who believe that the FBI is broken and that it is operating not in a politically neutral, even-handed manner, which is a very, very scary thing to think about for the nation's most powerful law enforcement agency. And actually that they lied to the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act court, the FISA court, which allows very in-depth spying on American citizens. It's dangerous stuff.
Well, and you know this inside and out. I mean, you worked there as an assistant there with the Attorney General in the Department of Justice. You know, you've been there, done that. You know how these agencies are to operate. And probably you're as shocked as anyone, perhaps more so, to see what seemingly is coming from those agencies these days. But what do you make of the timing? I mean, you brought up a very interesting point coming on the heels of the Durham report. And now this indictment also not only coming on the heels of, but coming on the day of the Oversight Committee actually receiving damaging information alleging and really pointing significantly to President Biden taking a bribe, potentially putting our country at risk. What do you make of the timing of all of this? Doesn't that in itself give every appearance that this is politically driven?
Well, that's hard to say. In addition to the fact, by the way, that President Biden is also under investigation for mishandling classified information from the time that he was a senator and a vice president. I don't know whether it was coincidental, although it is certainly true that sometimes when you know bad news is coming, you put something else out there in order to distract from the bad news that you believe is about to hit you. And I suppose that is possible. I don't know how much these officials talk to each other in terms of coordinating activities. I mean, the House has been seeking these documents for a while from FBI Director Chris Wray. Presumably, Jack Smith, who had sent a target letter to former President Trump just a few days ago, got the clearance from Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, to seek a return of this indictment. I have no idea whether it was coincidental or not, but it certainly is suspicious, and it adds to the long list of suspicious things that is going to create distrust among the public in our nation's most powerful law enforcement body.
Well said, and I would not expect you to give a blanket statement one way or the other, but absolutely this gives every appearance. And maybe there's not a whole lot of conversation between agencies, at least perhaps not as oftentimes there should be, but there does appear, at least to me, to be significant colluding and conversation to protect certain individuals right now. And this goes way back, as you referenced, the false Russia hoax and the number of people who were involved with that. And it just seems to go on and on and on, which brings great consternation to the American people, as well it should, as to a potential two-tiered system that is underway or perhaps already in our face. Now, President Biden, I want to play this clip and we'll get your reaction to it. He just can't help himself sometimes. Back in 2018, he was literally bragging, and a previous guest this evening brought this up. He was bragging about getting an investigation in Ukraine to fire someone who is investigating Burisma, and the vice president at the time, Vice President Biden, was bragging about how he shut this down. Play clip 8 for me, please.
I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting $1 billion. I said, you're not getting $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Well, son of a got fired.
It's amazing he got fired, but what he was not mentioning is that it appears as though he received $5 million to do that. I mean, this is, and all of that's coming out yesterday. It just seems as though the timing of this is very, like you said, suspicious. What do you make of? Do you see any connecting of the dots with all of this?
Well, look, I certainly remember when then Vice President Biden, or I guess this is after he was Vice President, I don't remember, was talking about insisting that Viktor Shokin, who was the Ukrainian prosecutor, be fired, and he was. And Viktor Shokin, of course, came forward and said, "I was looking into Hunter Biden and Burisma, and that's why I was fired." Other people have questioned Viktor Shokin's bona fides in terms of claiming that he has some corruption stain attached to him. But look, there's no question. I mean, Hunter Biden knew about as much about energy as I did by turning on the lights in my room today. And he was paid, a boatload of money solely for the purpose of being on the board of that organization. And there was no point to having him on the board of that organization other than it gave him access to the White House, to his father, who had principal responsibility for carrying out foreign policy initiatives in Ukraine where Burisma was operating. So it stinks to high heaven, and there's nothing new about that. If Joe Biden took money directly, certainly there were hints on Hunter Biden's laptop once it was admitted that it was, in fact, his laptop and not Russian disinformation that said that, I forget, it was like the big guy needs to get paid. So I'm not surprised. I'm disappointed, of course, in our elected leaders, but I'm not surprised that these allegations are coming out now.
Yeah, I'm not either, and that just adds to the suspicion of the indictments coming out yesterday. And in fact, some are suggesting that even the first impeachment of President Biden is related to this whole Biden-Burisma dealing, because the President Trump was pushing the Ukrainian leadership, Zelensky, to investigate all of that. And what do you know? He's faced with an impeachment. It just, like you said, it all stinks to high heaven.
Yeah, that was certainly the subject of the first impeachment. The president said he had this perfect call with Volodymyr Zelensky. I question whether it was a perfect call, but there was no question that the Bidens had some very, very shady dealings in Ukraine, particularly Hunter Biden, and in other countries too, including China.
We're coming down on our time. Are you fearful of a two-tiered system of justice? Do you sense a rat in the House in relation to justice?
Yeah, look, in addition to working as a deputy assistant attorney general, which you referenced, I was also for 7 years just a line federal prosecutor. And I work with a lot of very fine FBI agents out in the field who did great work. So I do not fault them. But there was and may still be a rot at the top. And, there are those of us who have urged FBI Director Chris Wray, who was not there when all of this happened in 2016, that was Jim Comey, to come in there and clean house. And I, for the life of me, don't know why he hasn't done that. Yes, some of these people have left, but it's come out that the FBI was querying databases containing FISA information in a totally improper fashion, doing so tens of thousands of times. This kind of thing should never have happened. And the director should have taken action against all of this stuff, and he still should.
Well, John Malcolm, I want to thank you so much for joining us this evening on Washington Watch. I don't suppose any of us should be waiting on bated breath for an indictment to be coming for President Biden. But thank you for your incredible insight this evening. We appreciate it. Have a great weekend.
My pleasure. Same to you.